This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies, ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, and the Pickle Bar, led by my 2 personal favorites, the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Very pleased to have with us on the show Stuff Summers, Steve Samsel. Their podcast is outstanding, and they came up with a great idea. How about a Penn State Hall of Fame? And they have their first names out there they put forward. Guys, great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. So who came up with the idea and then the execution of it?
That was all Steve Samsel's idea, per usual, which is the usual MO of all of the Stuff Summers Says media empire, if you will. He came up with the podcast idea, and we kicked around the blog, and he had done something similar with the Hall of Fame with a class, with one of his classes, but kind of we took the ball and rolled with it.
So it's his idea, then the voting of it. Was there any surprise to you, the 15 that came out, really, where you sat back and went, oh, okay?
Not. I think everybody in the class deserves to be there. What maybe not surprised me, but impressed me is the breadth of history here. You know, we've got people from the 1930s all the way up to Saquon, basically, David Taylor as well.
Yeah. And Steve, look, Stuff gave you all the credit in the world for this. Hey, the really good partners do that, you know.
I appreciate that.
So Steve, when you came up with this, is this something you've been thinking about for a long time?
We talked about it for the show. I honestly borrowed it from a class. I have that sports information class, and it was a final project. It was a okay. You have to present this event. What event could be possibly all-encompassing enough to challenge them? So this was the idea. And then I'm like, okay, then we got to back up. We got to make a class of a Hall of Fame class. And they did a great job identifying the class. But then even before the class, I was like, okay, well, what about this? What about this logistical thing? What about this person in the class? And it was a good discussion. So I hadn't been thinking about it a long time. And Darian's the right person. I mean, it's just, I don't know, fun to talk about that kind of stuff and bounce things off. And for us, it kind of had its own life as well.
Well, I think it's a phenomenal idea. I asked Darian whether there was any surprise to you, and how did it match up with what your class talked about?
The class had a little more recency bias, but we fleshed that out by saying they had to be out 4 years or so. I think you just forget how many people. I mean, when you first start thinking about, you could do a Hall of Fame, and then at this point, it's like, well, geez, it's been so many years in so many sports. Where would you start? And as you started going through it, I don't think there was any surprises. It was just, if you cap it off at a reasonable number for the class, and there was a girl who had worked with the NFL and had done the inductions, shot photos for the inductions in Canton last summer. She's like, well, a couple dozen is a lot if you're going to have an event. So we ended up 15 or so for that class, and that's where we were with this. With 17 we were done. It was just, you try to cut it off in a number, and you look at what's still out there, and I think that's the part that's just like, well, we can do this again next year, so that's good.
Well, I was about to ask that. I mean, Stuff, what about you? I mean, doing this next year will be numbers 16 through 30. Is this what you want to do?
We're going to have a next year, right? Like, we got the obvious people, so to speak, Cappy and your broadcast partner, Jack Ham. And I think I think collectively everybody agrees that this is a good class, but where I think things are going to get a lot more interesting and fun is next year is going to be, splitting hairs, so to speak, on who deserves to get in and who deserves to get moved into the Hall of Fame, so to speak.
Yeah, because, when you look at this, at some point people are going to have to start considering hockey. There have to be a number of wrestling names that are out there, right?
I think Joe Batista's name is a name that comes to mind for me. I think even with the football names, we didn't have Shane Conlon in here, which is arguably one of Penn State's greatest players, but it's just there were 6 people, so to speak, ahead of him in the voting. But then you've got other people like Spider Caldwell would be a great example of all-around good Penn Staters.
Yes.
That it's a little bit harder unless you're in the know, so to speak.
Steve, how do you look at that part about the more difficult ones that should be on the consideration list for next year?
Yeah, I think it gets harder. You could argue some of the names here, but I think it really gets harder than that next level. For me, I made a point. I saw Susan Robinson at church like the week after and said, hey, we did this thing, because she listens and reads the website too, and said, hey, we did this thing. You're going to see this is coming. I said, you might be the one name that one of the names that probably should have been there. I feel bad about that, right? And this is the smallest town in America. You get a chance to bump into somebody and do that. But then Kelly Mazzani, and like I said, the other wrestlers down the line, and men's lacrosse. There's people in every sport somewhere who probably deserve to fit there. And, if you get out of the top 15 or so, then you start saying, okay, what is the difference between 30 and 34 or whatever else, or whatever the number ends up becoming? So, hopefully everybody's been good about it. The response we've gotten has been all positive, which is wonderful. And I told Darian I'd happily be the complaint department if people had, something they really wanted to complain about. But everybody's been supportive and liked it and offered ideas. So it's got a chance to do more in the future.
Well, I love the fact that Fran Fisher was put on there. I thought that was because he did so much, not just on the broadcast part of it, but he was there really from day one of when Joe started. Then, of course, he and George both came back together later on. When it came time to discuss him, what were some of the ideas with him?
I think it was that. I've heard stories through the years, right, of and maybe it was more Mr. Tarman, but the folks who were championing the program in the years across the state when it had to be championed a little more than it was, and even with Fran, it's the logo mark, right, and the Nittany Lion Club, and all those pieces that make the program beyond what happens on the field.
What I found interesting is that when you go through, one of the guys in was David Taylor. Now, you have guys, of course, Carter Strachey just made it 5, but Ed Ruth won 3, and so forth. David Taylor won 2 national titles. Did you get any pushback from anybody because of other wrestlers that may have won more than he did?
Not a lot. It's been positive, but David was one of those ones for me. He was, when we talked about it and when people, I think, voted, it's interesting. I think Bo, in terms of publicity, I think that the Ohio State, this is Penn State, this is what we do thing, helped him perception-wise, in terms of splitting hairs with people, and that's what they remember. With David, he strikes me, and I think remembers for many people, was Cale's first guy, right? He was going to go somewhere else. He comes here with Cale, and he was kind of on the ground for it, and it's going to be down the line a little bit. Quentin Wright, his first national champion.
Yes.
There's a lot there that I think is going to make it fun. And I hope as we do this, we've been blessed, whether it's you and other people who come on and say, hey, we'll come in and talk to you about the stuff that you're kind of doing. I think getting some of these people going forward to talk about it, and next year we get to do it again, talking to these people, other people around it. It could be a lot of fun and have a lot of legs that way in terms of, just having fun and some content and some interesting things.
Is this a case where the two of you put together a list of nominees, or what's the process like for you two guys on this?
So the whole process began about a month ago. We just opened it up to anybody and everybody in terms of both the people. We wanted to make this Penn State, so we wanted fans and really anybody to submit as many names as they possibly could. From there, we took the top, I believe, 50 names, either 50 or 30 names, and whittled it down and put it to the vote. And then through the voting process of those names, we will then kind of have the Hall of Fame. But the nice thing is now we also know people for next year's ballot to kind of who should probably be on the ballot ahead of time, so to speak.
There's another part, because you've already done it once. There may be more interest in doing it. Do you expect to see more names than what you already have this original list? In terms of people like, okay, they're aware of it. Hey, by the way, how about this guy?
That happened to me even like in this process within building this. Bill Jeffrey was a name that came to mind.
Yes.
I was like, how could we leave Bill Jeffrey out? And he didn't. He got nominated a couple times, but I don't even know if he made the ballot. There's a lot of those types of names that, like, when you sit back and think about it, you know, it's 25 years of sports history.
Yeah.
It's hard to include everyone, but even in those early contributors, there's some really big names there.
Yeah. Same thing with you, Steve. And are you still doing this as part of the project within the class?
Yeah, it started last fall, and the classes, this different class this spring, same assignment, and it was interesting. The students this spring, they said they wanted the process to be that they would vote. They would come up with their nominees, and they would vote. You had to be on 60% or split up. I think it was 75% of the ballots. But ironically enough, the kid who pitched that idea and championed it hard and got everybody to agree with that, then when it came time to vote, didn't have as many names on the ballot. Like he cut his down like 5 people that he voted for from the group, which was interesting because he had doctored the game in a way, right? So we talked about that in terms of voting for other votes and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I think it's going to adapt, and the names that whether it was the Barr family, right? I mean, there's just so many, and Shar, who's on the list. I think some people say, oh, she's a very successful coach. Well, yeah, but she played really well. Would have made the Olympics had they gone. So there's just so many different layers of it that I think as you start peeling back the onion, you say, this wrestler, okay, what about that wrestler? Okay, this person from this sport, what about that one? And it's the kind of thing that makes it enjoyable because Penn State has had so much success for so many years across so many sports.
Well, if it's because Shar was going to be on the 80 Olympics and then persevered and made the 84 team and got a bronze medal. So, I mean, all credit to do that and keep your career alive for 4 more years is absolutely remarkable. I want to ask you guys about the podcast. You guys, I think you got a lot of mileage out of the hockey part. I'm going to guess, I know, Steve, you enjoy hockey stuff. I think, you're a big hockey guy, right?
Correct, yeah. I covered the team back at the Collegiate.
And so this had to be an incredible run for the two of you to talk about the entire time.
I think what made it so fun was the fact that Steve and I can speak the same language, so to speak, of knowing what the journey of this program has gone through and kind of been, and how this was all just a dream, really 20 years ago, and for it to flip around as quickly as it has, and to have somebody to share that with was a lot of fun.
It was. I'll tell you right now, exactly what I told Guy Godowski when he took the job. I said, "You are an expansion team without an expansion draft." That's exactly what I told him.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's what they happen to be. The wide range of topics and the cooperation you get from subjects like a Brian Tripp, a Rich Scarcella, Dick Girardi, I know was recently on, and so forth. What has that meant to you guys?
I think it's pretty cool. I really appreciate it. I think that's the first and foremost thing. We're just doing this for fun, and to have people kind of respond and be a part of it has really helped it grow, and I'm very appreciative of that. I think the other thing that's cool is it's fun to tell, and you've been on the podcast, it's fun to tell your guys' story, so to speak. You guys are the ones often telling us stories, but I think, all of the institutional knowledge you and Dick and Brian Tripp and Rich and really any of our guests have had, I think it shows what a special showcase it is for Penn State fans and how lucky they are to have the media that covers their team.
Steve, how important is it for you when you do get guests on that it's not just Q&A, but it's also a conversation?
Yeah, it's always. I think it's always a conversation because we open it up and pretty much let them tell their story, and we're not asking them. Even if they're former players, even if it's Dion Butler or Christian Hackenberg or somebody else, we're not talking football so much for them as it is, hey, let's talk about your career path. What are you doing now? And you get into conversations. You can hear about kids and things like that. And I think the humbling part of it for me has been people have said yes, right? And happily so, right? And we're trying not to bug people over and over, but it is a conversation of, hey, how'd this work out for you? Why did you do this? And we're touching, we're working people we know a little bit, like, making asks of, Dion Butler, when he was playing for the Seahawks, my daughter went out there to visit a friend in Seattle, and it happened to be, I don't know why, I can't remember why I would ask. We've been kind of close. I'm like, hey, my daughter's out there, maybe she'll swing by practice, she'll wear something Penn State. And he was like, oh, no, don't do that. Give her my number. This is Family and Friends Day. Have her come. Yeah. Have her come to the cookout, right? And it was just, that's the kind of people we've been blessed to kind of connect with and have back, so it ends up being a conversation because they're sharing their stories. They're talking about trying to fight back and play again if it was Deshaun Hamilton or somebody else. So it's just interesting that way for us, and hopefully somewhat entertaining for the people who decide to pop in on our conversations with people.
In terms of the way sports is today, I've always felt, for me personally, Steve, I want to find out what you think. I like to ask the students questions to kind of get a gauge of where they are and how they feel about sports, and it gives me at least a better idea of how younger people relate to sports as opposed to somebody of my generation. Do you find the same thing in your class?
Oh, all the time. I mean, every day. I mean, I'll go in. We have a segment where students have to come in and present something that, some sports organization or player, because it's a sports publicity class, something that they crushed and did great or something that crashed. They do both of those, and then we'll talk about things they're consuming and what's going on. I'm like, I may say, oh, that's interesting, but are you really? This is how I would have seen it, or why are you guys seeing this? Why is this your perspective? So it's good conversations, and hopefully there's something there for them, but there's always something there for me because I'm learning. Kind of like when I very, very first taught a class, we were talking about libel, and I made this reference to, was it Perry Mason? I think I said Perry Mason's going to take this to court, and these kids looked at me like I had 6 eyes, right? And I forgot Perry Mason was black and white TV, so it took me a couple lawyers to get to Ally McBeal for them back then to know what I was talking about. So the sports stuff's kind of the same way, just fresher and different.
One Perry Mason was in color, just so you know. One episode. That was it.
Well, maybe not on maybe I better check my TV.
I was like, what? Oh, my goodness. So just give us an outline where people can find the podcast stuff. You can do that? Yeah.
It's stuffsummersays.com. It's stuff, SOMERS, says.com. We've got the blog, we've got the podcast, we sell stuff. I know it's really thought about all the merchandising names for our media empire. And then the Hall of Fame's there. You can kind of check it out across YouTube, Spotify, all the normal places.
You two do a great job with it. A great balance to it as well, and thoroughly enjoyable. Great idea in the Hall of Fame. I was glad we were able to talk about it today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Steve Samsel, Stuff Summers. Yeah, what a great idea. We will come back more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Okay, so so are we still going to get shut down here, or what are we going to do?
It's a good question.
I mean, I don't know what's going on. Do you know what's going on here?
I do not. As you could tell by the beginning of the last half hour.
I don't know what's going on. I mean, geez, everyone turned around. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we're going to shut it down. Well, I thought, like I said, well, we have two people on the line that we scheduled for this interview. Like,
that was the same. That was my reaction.
Yeah. Like, I hear him in the background. Is it over?
He's having a weekend, man.
His entire life's a weekend. What are you talking about? My goodness. So, we're going to go dark, huh?
I don't know. They have it seems like we were. I don't know if that's still the plan. We might be here after the news. We might not be.
But maybe we should have a staff meeting about it. You know how I feel about those.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. When I was at WPSU Channel 3, I was there for a little bit more than 30 years, like 30 and a half years, okay? And every time they'd have these staff meetings, I'd just be sitting there. I'd say nothing, and somebody said, "You haven't said anything." I said, "I want to get back to work. I got stuff to do. This isn't work." "Oh, no, it is." I said, "No, it's only benefiting you. It's not benefiting me." Never been a big staff meeting guy.
Me neither.
Yeah, like, just let me do my deal.
At one time, they used to take us for a lunch for our staff meetings. I didn't mind that.
Yeah, at least you could eat, and like it's a great distraction.
Exactly.
You know. Let's see. Red Sox game. Didn't they played? They won 4-2 over the White Sox on Patriots Day.